When you go to Volta region, it's the worst of all. Volta region, the cocoa that we bought this year, if you compare to last year, which was our lowest in recent years, it is not even up to 10% of what we did last year.
Hi, welcome to another edition of The Lowdown here on GhanaWeb TV. My name is Daniel Oduro. Ghana prides itself as the second largest producer of cocoa in the world. Together with Ivory Coast, the two countries provide and produce more than 60% of the world's cocoa needs. But Ghana is facing an existential threat to its cocoa production, mainly because of the activities of illegal small-scale miners, popularly known as galamsey. The issue has been compounded by recent news reports that smugglers are smuggling Ghana's cocoa out of our country to neighboring African countries. Today, we have a conversation with the regulator and the head of the Public Affairs Unit of Ghana COCOBOD in terms of what they are doing to solve the problem that is really threatening Ghana's cocoa production. My name is Daniel Oduro. Welcome to the Lowdown. My guest is Fiifi Boafo. He's left the journalism field for us. I'm doing public affairs at COCOBOD. Senior, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been a long time.
Wow.
We speak on phone, but we've never met in a long time.
I'm hanging in here. The pressure is just real every day.
I can imagine.
You have to juggle between things. But hey, we are here to serve.
I know.
Yeah.
Let's delve right into it. So these days, what are the burning issues for you? There's been a lot of COCOBOD stories in the news, mainly about the task force and the ability to arrest some smugglers smuggling Ghana's cocoa out of the country. Is that the burning topic for COCOBOD at the moment?
It's one of the very critical issues we are dealing with because despite all the effort you put in producing the cocoa, if you're unable to put them together and then trade it to the international partners and then of course the trade houses, the companies, you're unable to realize anything. So we are at a point where there's the need for us to ensure that the cocoa produced, we are able to account for it and then also sell it. Beginning of the season, there were some concerns as to whether or not some farmers would want to sell their cocoa to us or help these smugglers to get it across our borders. But we've realized midstream that the problem is not really with the farmers. Of course, yes, there are some farmers who are aiding them, but there are people who have come into the system and then realized that there's an opportunity for them to make some money at the expense of the farmers and also COCOBOD and Ghana. So these are the people who are the beneficiaries of this scheme that is in place at the moment. Of course, it's occupying our time and our attention because there's every reason for us to make sure that the cocoa produced is accounted for.
Right.
If we do not account for, just as I indicated, the farmer loses out. COCOBOD will also lose out, and the country will not benefit. So, for example, COCOBOD at the beginning of every cocoa farm will provide seedlings for the cocoa farmer. We'll have extension officers who COCOBOD is financing to help the farmer do the line and pegging to get the farm established. When the farm is established, the cocoa which is being smuggled, COCOBOD is actually paying for chemicals to protect the cocoa beans. When that is formed, all the other costs within the value chain is provided for by COCOBOD. In fact, sometimes the road that is used to transport the cocoa, COCOBOD is paying for it. And then someone takes it and then smuggles it out of our country. It means that COCOBOD has lost it. One thing that is going to happen going forward is that if a district is identified to be a district that is smuggling our cocoa out of our country, the decision that has been taken is that that district is not going to continue enjoying the benefits COCOBOD has been providing to farmers. We are spending a huge amount of money rehabilitating farms in Western region along the Alubo Enclave. If you go to Western North, that is happening. Sadly, you have cocoa being smuggled along these lines. When you go to Volta region, it's the worst of all. Volta region, the cocoa that we bought this year, if you compare to last year, which was our lowest in recent years, it is not even up to 10% of what we did last year.
Seriously?
Yes, the cocoa in the Volta region is going to Togo.
It's because of the proximity to Togo.
Proximity to Togo. What we've also identified is that there are some foreigners, unfortunately, who are in this business. They facilitate it along the borders, and then they get it out of, when it gets to Togo, they get it out of the African system and they export it.
Wow.
So it is a concern for us.
It's like a cartel.
It is. The arrest that was made recently, which the media has thankfully given us some publicity, the people who are involved, some of them are not even Ghanaians. There are some from other African countries who are the beneficiaries of this scheme. So if this is happening, the farmer is losing out, and the country is also losing out. Right. And we think that there's every reason for us to ensure that we deal with this problem.
But this punitive measure about the district not benefiting, I mean, what is it supposed to solve? Is it supposed to ensure that the farmers would report when they see these smugglers doing their business, or what is it supposed to solve exactly? Because some may be participating, others may not be. And so if you are going to punish all of them as a district, then that becomes a problem.
Yes, so it works in two ways.
Okay.
The farmer who is directly supporting this scheme, it serves as a deterrent to such a farmer. Of course, even though we admit that the beneficiaries are not the farmers, there are some farmers who are also facilitating this business.
Okay.
If you go to part of Western South along the borders, we have evidence of them using canoe to move along the border.
Wow.
To go and sell it. So for such a farmer, if we are rehabilitating your farm at a very expensive cost to the country, and you choose to send your cocoa to a country that is not contributing anything to your business, then such a punitive measure will remind you that continuing that action would also deprive you of the benefit COCOBOD is giving you. But apart from that, if you also look on as a farmer and have these people undertake this activity, then you will lose out because you have also looked on unconcern for this activity to happen.
Okay.
So such a farmer would police it and will also make report to the security agencies and our staff, and they will be able to apprehend such persons. There are some license buying companies who are involved. Indeed, some of them, the recent arrest, some of the officers have been arrested. The decision, I have been told, is that such license companies risk losing their licenses because you are not supposed to do that. And immediately you do that, then you are going against the law, and there are punitive measures that will have to apply.
Okay.
And that would also be done. But you see, it is only license buying companies that are supposed to buy cocoa from cocoa farmers. So in a situation where you have a farmer who is also selling his or her cocoa to someone who is not a license buying company representative, then use that farmer, you are also helping that to happen.
But the cocoa farmers do know that they need to sell to only licensed.
Oh yes, I think to a very large extent the farmers know. In fact,
so this is not out of ignorance. What they are doing is deliberate.
Sometimes they may say it is out of convenience, but that convenience comes at a cost.
Okay.
The farmers do know very well. In fact, there are some license buying companies who undertake some illegal act where they move to the farmers to buy the cocoa from them, which they call the mobile purchases. It is even wrong. You have to take your cocoa to the station and sell. And when you do that, that is when we are able to check. You see, another thing which we're doing at the moment is to also reduce license buying companies cheating the farmers.
Okay.
So we brought in scales that you cannot tamper with.
Right.
At the weighing centers where we refer to as a shed. So if you allow people to just come to you with any weighing scale, you give yourself up for cheating.
Okay.
And there's the reason for you to go there. So if you allow people to just come to you and then you sell to them, then you are allowing yourself to be cheated, and also the possibility of the people smuggling it out of our system.
Okay, but let's talk about the convenience issue that these farmers talk about. How do we ensure that that problem is fixed so that they don't make that as an excuse, so that they don't necessarily have to drive out of their district to go to a far away place to go and have their cocoa weighed and bought by these license companies? How do we get closer to the farmers?
In fact, because of competition, now most of the license buying companies have, to a large extent, set up in our local communities.
Okay.
So the distance between where the farmer is producing the cocoa and where the shed is, it is not like moving from one district or even going to the district capital. No.
So then the convenience excuse is not really...
Well, it's a bit lame, but of course someone may say that, okay, well, I will have to probably do a 1 mile or 2 before I get it to the shed. So, well, if somebody is coming to me, it is easier, it takes away that cost.
Okay.
But that cost could cost you actually more,
right,
if you allow yourself for that to happen.
Okay. So let's talk about the motive. You've done some arrests. Are you seeing a pattern, or are you getting some intel? Obviously, I don't expect you to give me all the information, but are you seeing a pattern emerge in terms of the way these smugglers are operating?
Beginning, they used to carry it in smaller trucks.
Okay.
The pattern now is they are using bigger trucks.
Wow. They are becoming bold.
They have been emboldened in a way, you could say, and that is troubling. Usually when they get the cocoa, they take it from the sacks, the recognized sacks, the one we all know, put them in either polythene bags or containers that you find it difficult to identify it to be cocoa. So that is how they operate. So they take it from one center, go to a different location, repackage them or rebag them into something different, and then they get it out of our environment. So sure, we have been able to identify exactly how they are operating, and that is also the reason why we are able to make the arrest, which is also happening. We have people who are given tip-off, very important, and they are also motivated to do so, because if, for example, Oduro should identify, someone has 100 bags of cocoa and is smuggling, you stand to be a man with some good cash in your pocket. Because immediately you alert us and an arrest is made. The people who helped in arresting that cocoa, you gain 2/3 of the amount. So 100 should give you about 800,000, and 2/3 of it is yours.
Wow.
Straight away. That money is given to you. So people who know, the security officers who are aware that this is available to you, they take advantage of it and then they help in arresting them. So I think to a very large extent, it has also motivated. Just before this interview, I was in a meeting where we were discussing this topic. And the head of our intelligence was telling us that there was a particular place they went to give the people their 2/3 of the amount. A day later, they made an arrest again.
So they know the people.
Yeah,
they are their friends, they are their colleagues.
They are the people. But Charlie, when there's money on the table, people will throw brothers under the bus.
Anyway, this is the Lowdown here on GhanaWeb TV. We're having a very serious conversation about Ghana's cocoa production. As you know, the government is trying to raise revenue as much as possible. But Ghana's cocoa, which is one of the biggest revenue earners for the country, is being smuggled out of the country. This has also become important because already the cocoa production sector is struggling with galamsey and all its attendant problems. There's climate change to also talk about, and so the smuggling has really compounded the problems of our cocoa sector. Ghana stands to lose its ranking as the second producer of cocoa if immediate steps are not taken to address all these challenges that are affecting the cocoa sector. We'll go for our first break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation with Fiifi Boafo, the head of the Public Affairs Unit of the Ghana Cocoa Board. Stay with us. We're back after this break. Welcome back from the break. This is still the Lowdown here on GhanaWeb TV. My name is Daniel Oduro. Cocoa is a big subject for us on today's edition of the Lowdown. Fiifi, so lastly on the smuggling, we've heard a lot of people say COCOBOD is to blame because the moment Ivory Coast pays more in terms of the per unit or per ton price, this is going to happen. It's inevitable. People are greedy. People are naturally going to want to benefit more. Is that the problem? If that is the problem, what are we doing about it? Can't we at every point in time match the rates that Ivory Coast is giving?
The last 5 years, Ghana has paid more than Cote d'Ivoire. The last 5 years. But is the story that because Ghana was paying more, we're having smuggling from Cote d'Ivoire into Ghana? The answer is no.
So if we are paying more and they don't smuggle, so their farmers who are doing the right things?
Well, it's the entire system. The farmers, the security agencies, the people within the country realizing it. And of course, the aggressive nature the security agencies, I think, operate along their borders also so very deterrent. Yes. But apart from that, recently, there was a meeting in Kumasi where we met all districts and regional chief farmers to discuss the system of payment to farmers. Because in these countries, or our neighboring countries, there's nothing like free seedlings. There's nothing like chemicals. There's nothing like all the support we provide.
That we give to our farmers.
No, there's nothing like that. It doesn't exist. And they are able to get away with it because that's a huge part of their farming environment. As we have people who are doing large-scale farming. And when someone is into large-scale farming, there are things they can easily do. In Ghana, we have a number of smallholder farmers. The large-scale farming is very, very small. So these smallholder farmers will require some support. And if the support is non-existent, it is difficult for them to stay in business. So that is the reason why you have some amount of money which you should readily pay to the farmer going into these interventions and support programs for the farmers. So we ask the farmers, if you say that Cote d'Ivoire this time round after 5 years is paying slightly better amount than Ghana, and you prefer to be paid the same amount of money, do we now cancel all these interventions and give the money to you and you take care of it? The farmer says, no, we don't want it.
So they want to eat their cakes and have it back. But that's not fair.
That's the situation we find ourselves in. And that's the more reason why we are letting everybody know that if it continues, then COCOBOD will have to take a decision. Because if you spend all the amount of money buying fertilizers, buying insecticides and all that to support the farmers, and it is smuggled out of the system, where would you be
a little differential?
Yes. Where would you be able to have the money to pay for all these services? Because day in, day out, you have farmers making demands legitimate. And sometimes, of course, out of expectations that we want this done for us. How would that services be paid for? It will be paid for out of revenue from the industry. But if revenue from the industry is now going into different countries, then it will be difficult for us to support them in this regard. So yes, we are mindful. Yes, it is our wish to be able to pay how much our neighboring countries are paying and pay them more, just like we've done over the years. But it should not be a justification that, well, because at this time around someone is paying you more, it justifies it's for them to smuggle it. It comes at a cost, and the cost is not one I'm sure we've all agreed that that is the way to go.
But do you think in the next few months we should be at par or even start paying better than Ivory Coast, that like we have done the last 5 years, like you mentioned?
I wouldn't want to usurp the powers of a very important committee, that is the Producer Price Review Committee, what is chaired by the Minister of Agri. We have farmers and all industry players who are part of this committee. They take the decision as to how much farmers are supposed to be paid. As we speak, that committee has not met.
Okay.
And I will only wait when there's a signal, then I can speak to you about it. Okay. But of course, the concern has come up. People are discussing it, that if you do the cost-benefit analysis, what should be the way to go? But we are not there yet, so I will not be able to speak to that.
Okay. So away from smuggling, Galamsey, climate change. So a few days ago, I was in a climate change training. Very big topic, and it looks like we're overlooking it. But how much impact is climate change having on our cocoa production?
It's huge. Very huge. The impact of climate change is huge because if you look at production trends, it has changed. In fact, now our research wing is even developing a manual on how we even do our farmer education and sensitization. Over the years, we know, like, okay, between this period to that period, that's when you have the rainfall pattern. Yeah. You have the rain at a point. You have Hamatan at this season.
Yeah.
These days, you sometimes have rainfall during December.
Yeah.
And June, July, where you have rainfall, you have dry spell.
Yeah.
So even when you are supposed to apply the fertilizers, because if you apply the fertilizers, the granular fertilizer, you need rainfall for them to melt in order to get into the soil to get production. Your expectation is that you have rainfall within the period. You apply it, there's no rainfall.
Yeah.
It affects your production.
Yeah.
So its effect is huge. And I think the period where you have the cocoa also flowering.
Yeah.
So the reason why we have the light crop and then the main crop is that the main crop beans meet the rainfall. So when the cocoa flowers and there's a huge rainfall, it helps with pod development. This time round, we are having incidents of dry spell within the period where you're supposed to have the rainfall. Yeah. So there will be there will be flowering, but then we don't meet the rainfall, so you don't even get your cocoa.
Meanwhile, you've spent money too.
You spend money. You've prepared, you've done your pruning, you've sprayed your chemicals that is supposed to help with pod flowering, flowering inducers. But because it doesn't meet the rainfall, it affects your production. For someone who is sitting just criticizing, the person who said that, oh, because you have not invested into the industry, that is why you are not having results. But the point is that it did not meet the raining season, for which reason you've lost out.
Wow.
So, and that is just to give you an idea of the impact or the effect climate change is having on our industry. Unfortunately, we rely on rain-fed agriculture as a country, and we are not there yet. At present, COCOBOD is piloting. In fact, we've done the pilot to a state where we are supposed to roll out fully irrigation. The cost involved so far, those that we have tried, is a little bit on the higher side, so there's the need for us to find one that the farmers will be convinced that indeed it serves the purpose. Yeah. Because yes, it's about the mathematics. You need to do the cost-benefit analysis. So yes, the effect of climate change is one that is telling on our industry.
But what are the scientists saying? We have the Cocoa Research Institute, no?
Yes, Cocoa Research Institute.
What are they saying? Is it something that we can do to reverse this, or this is out of our hands and is up to nature and we have to just study the pattern and realign?
We need to protect our environment. It is critical. It is critical to protect our environment because if we look at the geography of our country, cocoa production is within our forest zones. And our forest zones, that is where the rainfall pattern is better. In a situation where we are cutting our forest and doing illegal mining, definitely it will have effect on our production as a country. So if we are able to deal with that, it helps. One problem which we've also even identified, and it's even the major problem when it comes to irrigation, is the Galamsey, where the river bodies which we are supposed to use. for irrigation. Now the color
is polluted.
Yes, hugely polluted. So you're unable to use it, and it's even adding to the costs of the irrigation system we are trying to introduce. Because you have to then use boreholes, so sinking the boreholes and all that. And sometimes the water quality and the water levels, the quantity you'll be able to get for the purpose is also problematic. So it adds to our cost. So yes, we have a challenge. The scientists are still exploring. They've made some recommendations. They are not sufficient yet, but there's still the need for us to explore further. Yes, their initial proposal is for us to go irrigation. But with irrigation, how do you use the polluted water to irrigate? As we speak, I've even said this on radio before, farmers who are supposed to spray their farms, the water they need to spray their farms, they will have to carry it from home to the farm because the river bodies have been polluted and they're unable to use it.
So the fight against illegal small-scale mining it goes beyond the fact that it's polluting the water bodies and a threat to our, if you like, the supply of water in the coming years, but it's also affecting our cocoa production.
It's huge.
Wow.
The fight against illegal mining, for us, it's at the heart of the survival of the cocoa industry. I say so because I've talked about the water bodies being polluted. I've also spoken about the weather pattern in this area. Another thing is also increasing the costs of farming. Because if the farmers will have to carry water from home to the farm, obviously that is a cost to the farmer which hitherto he wouldn't have to deal with. Another thing is that now even access to labor is difficult for the farmers.
They prefer to go and do galamsey.
Yes.
Wow.
I was talking to a cousin who, she's a lady, a cocoa farmer doing very well. She's unable to even harvest the pods alone. She will need farm hands to do that. But this is a very galamsey endemic area. So the young boys are at the galamsey site. So it's even difficult to get people to help you harvest, not to talk of help you maintain your farm. So is that an additional cost? The another thing that illegal mining is also, the effect is also having on cocoa farming is that they use force in taking their farms from them. They induce them into selling it. And those who refuse to sell, what they do is that they wash the tailings from a nearby farm or a nearby site into the cocoa farmer's farm.
Destroy it.
And destroy the fertility of the land, and the farmer is forced to give it out. So for us, we believe that the fight against illegal mining is one thing that goes straight into the hearts of the survival of the cocoa industry. Failure to deal with it will have a huge impact on the cocoa industry.
So I'm sure we know the scale of work that we need to do as a country if we want to maintain our standing and even become the world's leading producer of cocoa. The problems are multifaceted and it needs a multidimensional approach to try and arrest it. We'll end our first part of the interview here, and then the part two will focus on what COCOBOD is doing in terms of their scholarship schemes, their roads network that they are building and all of that, and what Ghana wants to do in terms of refining its cocoa or making finished products of its cocoa beans in the second part of our interview. So thank you very much, Fiifi, for your time. We'll continue the part two of this interview next week. So stay with us. We're back with part two of this interview. My name is GhanaWeb. This has been another edition of The Lowdown on GhanaWeb TV.